The Backrooms movie likely left you with quite a few questions and not that many answers. Like, what the hell happens to Clark? He seems fine one moment, and then the next thing we know, he has completely snapped, holding Mary at knife point. But what really happened inside of his head to make him do all of this? But before I move on with the video, I do want to give a spoiler warning here. If you haven't seen the movie yet, go watch it, then come back to this video where I explain the ending. So you remember Clark suddenly just losing it at the end, right? It's like 1 second he's pretty much sane, then he's holding Mary hostage and spewing conspiracies about the place. And to be honest, it kind of felt like it was out of nowhere. But what actually happened to make Clark snap? I'm gonna go over some theories as well as the very likely culprit of what happened to him. So wait until the end of the video and then drop a comment giving me your thoughts and what you think happened to him. Clark is a divorced, failing furniture store owner who's been in therapy. The film opens up with a therapy session reenacting the night his wife left him. So we know Clark already has issues. He's extremely bitter, he always feels like the victim, and he has a lot of anger within him. One night, as he's sleeping in bed in his furniture store, because remember, he got kicked out of his house by his wife, he notices the lights start flickering. So he goes downstairs, looks at the breaker box, and then he notices a slit in the wall where there's kind of light shining through. But he ends up no-clipping and falling through it straight into the back rooms. He tries his best to map out this place, and then he actually tells his therapist about it, who does not believe him. So he wants to get proof of this place. So what he does is he goes to his employees, and he asks them to come along with him for a little research. His two employees are named Kat and Bobby. He has Bobby bring along his camera with him so they can record what they find in the back rooms. As they're kind of exploring this place, they find a ramp. Bobby agrees to go down it to film what's down there, so Clark ties a rope around his waist to hoist him down this ramp. When he's down there, he sees all these clothes, and then something startles him, so he's begging to get pulled back up to safety. After some struggling, he does get pulled back up the ramp, but then something grabs on the rope and starts tugging him back in. Eventually, the bed that the rope is tied to gets pulled as well, and both Clark and Kat get knocked down. And you know where it goes from there. Kat and Bobby both die to this monster that we haven't seen yet. We see the monster pick up the camera and start filming Clark, but the monster decides not to kill him because it's Clark. This monster is a copy of him. This is where it gets a little weird because we don't know how much time has passed from when Mary actually goes to try to find Clark, but we do see mail piling up outside of his door, so it could be a few days, it could be weeks, it could even be a month. We don't know. Eventually, she makes her way downstairs and she sees the doorway marked out with the tape. She goes to get a closer look at it and then she sees a fly no-clip through it. Then she decides to put her hand through, notices that her hand's just moving through the wall as if nothing was there, and then she goes through it. She's walking around this place and she's extremely confused and scared. I mean, as anybody would be. She explores for a while and then she sees this painting on the wall, and the painting is actually Clark's copy, Captain Clark. And this is where we see Clark again. Clark finds her, and at first he's like scared. He seems like he's trying to protect her from something, but he starts backing up into the corner behind her, and then out of nowhere he just starts choking her out. Now at this point, Clark is already seeming extremely insane and crazy, but the final nail in the coffin is the dinner scene where he's cutting into the copies of people and he's saying you can eat them, and eventually they reenact the scene with his wife again. They roleplay that again, and he has completely snapped. He's saying all these crazy things like, I belong down here, I like it down here, I feel like I belong down here, all while holding Mary at knife point, having her tied up to a chair. We never see him actually go crazy, so fans have this gap that they have just filled with theories, so let's get into them. So theory number one, I want to start with Clark's pre-existing trauma. Clark was already a ticking time bomb. All evidence supports this. He was on edge from the very start of the movie. He was a problem-drinking divorcee. He was nursing this sense of victimhood that was masking his anger. He's hurt by his divorce, and he's haunted by his broken dreams of being an architect. Remember the therapy scene where he loses his temper, acting out his breakup? Railing against how he paid for his wife's schooling while she stayed at home. You know, he pays for everything. That really sets the stage here. The movie hints Clark is already emotionally fragile, like he's failed his dream, he was kicked out of his home, and now he runs a failing store. So the theory goes that Clark's life was already falling apart and the Backrooms just really pushed him over. One counterpoint to this theory is that, yeah, sure, he's extremely unhappy with his current state, but even a bitter guy doesn't just snap and become murderous overnight. I feel like the movie is suggesting something more supernatural is at play here. Like the Backrooms are kind of changing his mind as he's in there, but still Clark had little left to lose, so it really wouldn't take much to break him. The next theory I'm going to go over is the memory chamber effect, or the echo chamber effect. Now this one's a little confusing. Think of the Backrooms like a supernatural type of mind mirror. Phil tells Mary that it's an echo chamber for memories. The Backrooms absorb memories, which is why rooms and people look familiar but are just slightly off. It's as if your subconscious is the one building the room. This means that Clark's mental baggage just gets amplified tenfold. As Clark maps the rooms, he keeps finding things from his own life. Furniture, homes, even a still life of his wife, or ex-wife, I mean. The complex creates copies of whoever enters it. Even after the original people leave, the copies remain there forever. And eventually Clark does meet his own copy. As Clark is in the backrooms, they are actively feeding on his mind. His thoughts are getting fed back to him in kind of a warped type of way, where it's not necessarily what happened, it's kind of like a twisted version of what happened. Imagine being surrounded just by echoes of your life. That could definitely make any sane man crazy. The next theory I want to get into is the time dilation theory, and to me it's the most interesting one. The theory goes like this. Time passes a lot faster when you're in the backrooms. As you might recall in one of Kane Pixel's videos, when the researcher gets separated from the group and then 2 months just pass, by that logic, Clark could have been wandering around the backrooms for weeks, months, or even possibly years. After Kat and Bobby die, Clark is completely alone. We see him create a kind of like hideout sort of area, but fans point out that he's clearly settled in. He has his own house and everything, which implies a long stay. If the months pass with no human contact, no daylight, and only these creepy yellow backrooms walls, anybody would degrade mentally. Isolation itself feels like a nightmare. By the time Mary enters, Clark already seems extremely worn out, extremely gone. So this theory goes that the backrooms slowly drove him insane by prolonging his stay. The next theory I want to get into is kind of on the nose. Clark might just like the backrooms. When he says he belongs there, he just believes it. This is basically the idea that he's given himself over to it and kind of just became mad voluntarily. He literally says, "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be." One Redditor suggests that once Clark accepts the space accepts him. So in other words, instead of running for home, he's living like a king inside of these yellow walls. This could connect with his anger in a way. All of the walls and the monsters kind of seem to accept his bitterness and validate it. He even forces Mary to accept his bitter tendencies. He's not lost, he's completely comfortable where he is. It's almost like if you were sent to prison and then offered freedom and chose to stay in prison. At the end, he pleads to Mary to let him stay there, even though I don't think she was going to force you to leave, saying he chooses that life. This next theory I want to go over is a very fun theory, but it is very out there. The Clark we see at the end of the movie might not be the original Clark. It might be another copy. As we see in the dinner scene, there's copies of people, so he might just be another one of those copies. He might just be the first copy that the Backrooms made. Well, technically the second copy. There's a few clues to support this claim. First of all, he seems to know a few things, but then acts very strange. For instance, there's a scene where he can read Mary's thoughts, and also, how did he find the location of Kat? If Clark were copied, the theory would go, he wouldn't get frightened by his original story, because he already knows it. Some proof for this is the still lifes and the copies can retain memories. Clark is even calmly talking to the pirate version of himself, indicating some sort of memory sync. If Clark had spent this time as a clone, that could definitely explain some of the memory glitches that he has. Also, the initial chase in the pool rooms, he almost dies. Some people speculate that maybe that was the copy, and the Clark that we see later might be the first iteration of a copy gone wrong. The final theory I want to go over is very likely it's just that all of the trauma that he experienced after seeing Kat and Bobby get murdered just sent him over the edge. The way that they got murdered was extremely gruesome. Maybe he just experienced some sort of PTSD breakdown after what he went through. We know that Kat survived the initial fall down the little ramp thing, but we have no idea what happened to her after that. The next time we see her, it's just her head. We already know that Clark is wallowing in the death of his 2 employees. One could argue that the guilt and the horror of everything that was going on just sent him over the edge and caused him to snap. That could also really mess up your mind. He's literally watching himself tear other people apart. The movie shows Clark on the cusp of collapse after the pool scene, and by the time Mary arrives, he has an extremely strange kind of look on his face. Like what he went through is enough to send any sane person crazy. So piecing it all together, Clark was already a burned out, broken man to begin with. The Backrooms then exploited this weakness, warping reality around him. He spent too much time alone with his dark thoughts and these nightmarish copies of people. I feel like the design of this film intentionally skips the slow descent into madness. It just jumps straight to the end to try to make us piece it together ourselves. Like when he's obsessed with exploring the Backrooms to begin with. There's even a comment where he states, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" which could signify him changing his views about the Backrooms. There's really no official explanation for what happens to him, but everyone acknowledges that the ending is supposed to be ambiguous. The film is a psychological horror movie at its core. Kane Parson even said himself that he doesn't want to spoon-feed every single answer. He kind of just wants fans to debate about it, which I love. If we look at some quotes, Mary describes the Backrooms as a prison of memory, while Clark's words shows that he feels imprisoned by his shortcomings. So the type of canon evidence we have is a combination of theory 1 and 2, a broken man meeting a hellish reflection of himself, which then drives him over the edge. The other theories kind of fill in little details and offer some fun what ifs, but the bottom line is Clark is rapidly declining, faster than any normal person should. If I had to pick a theory for what I think is canon, it would be that Clark's own issues along with the trauma that he experienced sent him over the edge. Even the opening scenes with him at therapy already seems at wit's end. So I feel like the Backrooms could really weaponize his own mind against him. So I really want to know what you guys think. I want to know what your theories are if you have any. I want to know which theory you believe is correct. I also want to know how you felt about this movie. Did you enjoy it? Are you excited for the sequel? I hope I was able to help you guys figure out why he went crazy so fast. And that is all for this video.